Welcome to CXOTalk 857. I'm Michael Krigsman, and we're exploring AI and personalization with a world expert. David Edelman's new book is called Personalized: Customer Strategy in the Age of AI. He teaches at the Harvard Business School, is a senior advisor at the Boston Consulting Group, was chief marketing officer at the insurance giant Aetna, and was a partner at McKinsey, and he's done a lot more than that.
I've been playing around in this space actually since 1989. Back then, before the internet, I was a young consultant at BCG. 3 clients had asked us in a row, just coincidentally, what can we start doing with customer information that we are collecting? And we talked to them about loyalty programs, targeted marketing, new ways of doing customer service. And I thought there was something more to this, and this was only going to grow. Came up with the term segment of one marketing. Wrote an article about it. It really took off. It became the launch pad for a big chunk of my career. And as the internet came in and new capabilities, I was working very closely with clients on how to get more value out of the potential of customer information. And of course, over time, started to see how the nature of that value changed, but also saw practices that were at best creepy, inappropriate as well. And now we're at a point where AI can enable incredible opportunities, but can also completely turn people off. And so it seemed like the right time to talk about defining what we really mean by high quality, good, real personalization, and also to talk about what it takes to make it something that really becomes a competitive differentiator as opposed to just a marketing tactic. And so that's what the book really focuses on, elevating this to something that becomes your value proposition, and gives lots of examples and a framework for doing that. So it's important to think about this from that perspective versus just using data to manipulate people.
It's a very interesting perspective for you. Then personalization AI is the core of the relationship that an organization, a brand has with its customers. It's not just a veneer to manipulate emotions and get people to buy more stuff.
That's right. And think about the brands that you as a consumer today tend to do more business with, especially some of the digital native brands, Spotify in music, Netflix in movies, Uber in transportation. A lot of the value you get from them is because of how they use information about you, which you are generally comfortable with them having, and that in many cases you deliberately gave them. That information makes your experience better, faster, possibly cheaper, also could be more joyful, discovering new things. And that now is becoming a basis of competition, not just among digital native brands, but in more traditional sectors as well. Let me give you an example, Michael, of how in a dull area, this can really make a difference. So a few years ago, and this is actually before Gen AI became a big thing, where I was living was Lexington, Massachusetts, and they offered an incentive for people to put solar panels on their homes. You can get a rebate on some of your property taxes. And that opened the floodgates for all kinds of marketing, everyone trying to pitch you solar panels, 25% off this, 40% off that. But actually buying solar panels has a bit of complexity because you have the cost of the installation, the cost of the panels. Then if you generate too much energy, you got to sell it back. There's tax incentives. So it's kind of confusing. One piece of mail came through and it said, Edelman household, we've done the math at your address, it had the address, and we believe you can save over 20% on your annual energy bills, which is really the number that matters to me, with Sungevity. And there's a personalized URL in this envelope that'll explain how. I open the envelope, type in the URL, immediately get a Google Earth image of the roof of my house with solar panels superimposed on the roof and a calculation down the side of how much energy that number of panels at my longitude and latitude, at the east-west orientation of my roof, how much energy that would generate. Then they went to Zillow, got the square footage of my home, and used that to estimate how much energy over the course of the year I would use. So they had the numerator from the Google Earth calculation, the denominator from the Zillow calculation, came out to 21.3%. Then click here to learn more. And I'm immediately put into a video call with a young salesman who sees that I'm Mr. Edelman, greets me, has all the information about me right there. I did not have to explain anything. And he immediately starts to explain the economics, the leasing options, how it works. And he's already armed with 2 email addresses of neighbors of mine who have already been working with them. The economics made sense to me. The references from my 2 neighbors who I actually didn't know, I got to meet them this way, were all positive. So we did it. And we didn't even look at a competitor. They made the process so easy. And then from that point on, it was all managed through an app, the scheduling for the installation, monitoring how much energy would come through. When a squirrel ate one of the wires, I got a notification, used the app to schedule it. It was all seamless. That's personalization. That was adding value, empowering me to understand how to actually buy something by taking data that I realized, it's appropriate they have. This isn't really creepy and it's adding value to me. And it made a huge difference in helping me navigate.
How is that different from 20 years ago, where a diligent salesperson, a car salesman, for example, would do the same thing? So, what's new today? Why should we care, especially today?
The reason today is because we can do this at scale. We can do this at scale, and we can also unlock information that car salesman probably wouldn't necessarily be able to get. Maybe it's easier with a car, but for other categories, you can unlock information. So if you think about the longevity example, there's a lot of different kinds of AI and math and calculations that are happening that they're stringing together and doing this on a very broad basis. They basically did a Google Earth scan of every home in Lexington, Massachusetts, hunting for houses with a minimum of 20% savings, and then use that to target those homes and generate this kind of experience. So there's modeling, being able to interpret the Google Earth data, being able to render the images, being able actually, I talked with the CMO to test and learn, which they did for about 18 months to figure out how to get that experience right. So a big part of this is being able to do it at scale. That's the positive. The flip side is, because you can do stuff like this at scale, you can also do things that may be more creepy. Um, you know, Providing people, actually bombarding people with marketing because because it's easier to do at scale and maybe slightly personalize it. And that's the risk we run. And a big part of what we want to advocate and talk through examples in the books is how to do that appropriately so that you're actually building trust.
So, in other words, you can use AI, the power of AI, for greatness and build your reputation. You can also, in many cases, destroy your business inadvertently and your reputation because you can use it so easily at scale.
I don't know how far in terms of completely destroying your business, but you can certainly turn people off and jack up your unsubscribe rates. And so, give you a very simple example. I recently moved from Lexington. I now live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I was bombarded with emails from Home Depot. Just absolutely bombarded. All different kinds from all different departments. I was ready to unsubscribe. And then they asked me, what's your next project? And I thought, okay, this has promise. They're asking me, and maybe they'll use that. They just then sent a lot of stuff around bathroom renovation that did not seem very well organized. I mean, they could have asked me things like, what's your budget? What are you interested in doing? They could even, these days, have me take a picture of my current bathroom, use that to understand the dimensions of my bathroom, ask me what I wanted to upgrade, connect me with a designer, show me options. There's a lot of capabilities that are out there. The tools to do that are there, but it takes the focus and discipline to say you want to do this to legitimately add value versus just go for the volume of bombarding people.
I think the benefit is clear as you were just describing the benefit of being able to do this in an automated way at scale. So the question then comes up, how do we go about accomplishing this goal?
In the book, we lay out a framework of 5 different promises. Essentially, if you're using my information to give me value, you're implicitly making 5 promises. And this is a good way to organize your thinking about how to design the experiences and the capabilities and processes you'll need to execute. So the first of the 5 promises, actually the most important, is empower me. Help me to do something I could not do before, like figure out how to buy solar panels and know what's really right for me. So empower me, help me do something that's going to add value. But then in order to do that, you have to know me. You have to have information that I, as a customer, am comfortable with you having. It may be because you just asked me. It may be from public records that I'm pretty comfortable that, okay, those exist. It could be from the interactions that I have with you on a daily basis. But know me. And there's a lot of AI tools now that can help you know me even better. That can take, when I'm talking to a call center rep, the transcript of that, digitize that, and use that to understand where I may be having problems using your product, for example. You can also use AI to actually stitch together lots of different points of data about me and integrate data in ways that you couldn't before. So we have empower me, know me. Once you know me, reach me appropriately. Don't bombard me. Orchestrate. When is the right time to actually reach out? And again, AI systems can do a very good job of doing predictive modeling that here's a trigger, it's the right time to send this, some type of outreach to somebody. And it can also, if you have multiple ones that you might want to send, coordinate which are really the best ones to send when. Then when you reach me, show me. Make it easy for me to understand. Give me a personalized experience like the image of my roof with the solar panels on it. And Gen AI makes that incredibly easier to do. A great example of this was when I was chief marketing officer at Aetna. People didn't understand their health insurance. And that was a problem because they call into the call center, they do things out of network. So we worked with a company called Sunday Sky to create personalized videos, simple animations, not very sophisticated, but they were personalized. So, Michael, we could tell you this is the health insurance you have bought. Who in your family is covered? Do they have primary care relationships? If not, here are nearby doctors. Click, make an appointment. They're taking new patients. That was a home run. People understood finally their health insurance. And then, so we have empower me, know me, reach me, show me, and then delight me. As you get more information from me, from the interactions that we have, make the experience better. And that certainly is what happens with services like Spotify and Netflix. You get better recommendations over time. So those 5 are what we call the 5 promises of personalization. And as I laid out, each of those has different capabilities behind it, all of which are increasingly available. But you have to deliberately say, this is the direction you want to go, and you're going to put those capabilities together to add value to your customers.
Please subscribe to our newsletter and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out CXOTalk.com. We really do have extraordinary guests coming up, so check it out. So let's just take a few questions just in order as they come in. And this is from Chris Peterson on Twitter. And Chris Peterson says, in the solar panel example, did the neighbors opt in to be reference customers and have their contact information shared? So it's a privacy question.
The answer is yes. They were not actually surprised when I reached out to them. Once I became a customer, I was asked the same thing, whether I would serve as a reference. And by the way, I actually referred them to my sister, who ended up using them as well.
We have a really interesting question on LinkedIn from Ann Mara Potts, who says, why are we stuck in the bombardment phase? She thinks it's an organizational challenge. Is that true in your eyes? And she goes on, in other words, data is held in long-standing silos within the organization. Customer service data isn't accessible by anybody and so forth. So why are we stuck there?
Take a typical retailer or financial services company, any organization that has several different products that they sell, each of which has somebody on top of those products who is trying to drive a P&L and drive their own growth. So each product manager ends up going after overlapping customers. And so from, whether it's Home Depot, whether it's a large bank, everyone is hitting you, and it's not orchestrated, it's not coordinated, and usually the same customers tend to be eligible for multiple things. They're likely to score high as one of the better prospects. And so there isn't a coordination. And like you said, everyone has their own database and they're all going after you. And then other things happen that keep the data separate, balkanized. For example, the fact that you called into customer service and you had a problem, that information doesn't get to marketing. So you just had a problem. And I'll give you a great example of this, and I'm not afraid to do it because I've met their chief marketing officer and talked about it. I have been a big fan of Sonos, the speaker systems, but they just did this app upgrade that is not working well. And I had called in, I had written to them, and I am not the only one who's having significant problems with the app. And yet they constantly hit me to buy more speakers. And there's no point in trying to hit me to buy more speakers until we fix the app. But they don't seem to share that information. It certainly doesn't come across that way. So yes, a lot of this has to do with balkanization of data, with the lack of anyone taking the perspective from a customer's point of view, and from at a high level saying, we really want to drive customer lifetime value as one of our main goals, instead of just everybody going after trying to hit you. And what actually happens, and at Aetna, we measured this. When I became chief marketing officer at Aetna, I also got Aetna health insurance. So I was a customer as well as chief marketing officer. And within the first 2 months, I was getting bombarded with all kinds of my own team stuff. And so why is this happening? And so I asked to look at data of how often we hit somebody versus how often, what was their open rates and what were their unsubscribe rates. And it was absolutely clear that beyond 4 touches a month, everything plummeted. People were unsubscribing or they just weren't opening. And so less is more, especially if that less is smarter and connects in a much more relevant way with the customer.
So you're really going far, far away from that spray and pray mentality where we just, use the data and just dump it out there and send out as much as we can because it costs us almost nothing. That's the philosophy, by the way, if you take it to an extreme, of the scammers that we get calls from all the time.
Yeah, and you don't want to be lumped into that. And I think for the for the greater good. I think that my bet is there's going to be questions about regulation and what can we do about managing customer data. And I think there are definitely needs for regulation of how customer information is used. But I also think we need to show people that it's not all invasive, creepy, and manipulative, that there are quite a lot of uses of customer information that are valuable. For instance, you return to a site that you've been to very often, you want that site to recognize you, to know that you've been there before and what you've been looking at so it can be more relevant to speed up your checkout process. So we do need to have these examples of where using customer information adds value. The danger is a tragedy of the commons where there's so much crap thrown at people that they feel very uncomfortable about. It puts even more pressure to limit what's possible.
On this question of data, Arslan Khan on Twitter says the following: with so much repetitive data being collected by so many organizations, would it ever be possible to have a central repository for all appropriate data and organizations just can do data calls to pull that data out? Do you see organizations ever being willing to collaborate on something like this?
I don't think we're going to see a single central part, nor do I think we want that, because there's a lot of risk involved in single points of failure, for example. But I do see two things happening. One is ecosystems emerging, where clusters of companies are working together to share information because the act of sharing information enables you to provide a solution. So I'll give you an example. Marriott Bonvoy in travel, they are moving towards the capability of you just saying in a chat bot, I want to go to Spain for 10 days. I want to use as much points as possible. I got two teenage kids. Here's my budget. We only want to stay in 3 hotels over the 10 days. Give us some itineraries and options that you can book. Marriott can't answer that completely on its own. It has to coordinate with transportation players, with attractions, restaurants, things like that. It needs an ecosystem that it can move information around. And we can get into a whole thing about agentic AI, which is a way for that information to be going out and making calls. But AI enables you to combine information more easily. It enables you to track that information so you have an audit trail and control who sees what. And so I do believe companies like Marriott, possibly Home Depot or Lowe's for home renovation, others in healthcare and a number of different categories are going to become destinations tied to some kind of loyalty program that do hold a range of information that is shared across that ecosystem. I think the other thing that may happen also, pretty likely, is that people will have their own agents and have a way for them to hold the information that they want others to have. And others will come and call on it and in the moment ask for your permission to get it. I think we're going to see Google, Apple, Meta, Amazon. They're all going to compete for capabilities like that. And it'll be a question of getting those to operate appropriately and people's comfort with how they are actually doing that management of information.
It's interesting that you mentioned agentic AI because I was thinking agents seem like the natural way to accomplish this lengthy series of tasks that you were describing in the case of the solar provider. So it's really elaborate personalization based on research and data.
Longevity, like I said, it's a string of different AI things. Now, in those days, which I mean, this happened 4 years ago, we didn't really have agentic AI. So there were manual things that had to happen in between, but still a lot of it was automated. Yes, you can now string those together increasingly easily. Some of it is called agents being able to do it. Some of it is just composite AI, where a number of different AI tools are working together. But yes, I do see more and more companies thinking about how to deliver customer solutions that are personalized, that require a number of different actions, and using agents to bring that together. I mean, the example of Home Depot using a picture of my bathroom that I want to renovate and then going through, okay, let's analyze that picture for dimensions and placement and where are the pipes and all of that. And then saying, okay, what are products, new products we have that could fit in those places with the right dimensions? What are the costs of those products? Then using Gen AI to create a new rendering. That could all be strung together through agents because I doubt there'll be necessarily a single software that can do all of that. Um, and I do think that is where things are going to go. The key in what I said, though, is solutions. It's about providing a solution to somebody's need and then figuring out increasingly the degrees of automation that you want to string together to make that possible at scale.
I just want to take a moment and suggest folks that you subscribe to the CXOTalk newsletter. Just go to cxotalk.com because we have live shows and we will notify you and you can join in and ask your questions. And we have some additional great questions coming in. This is from Ritu Bandari. And Ritu says, thanks for some great insights. Would be great to have your view on the AI leverage to personalize customer journeys in B2B marketing. So using AI to personalize the customer journey in B2B marketing.
B2B, I think, is a really underdeveloped area for this, but there are definitely examples. The challenge in B2B is that there's a number of different routes to market because you can be B2B and be direct to your customer. You can B2B with a salesperson in the middle. So I'm going to give you two examples, and it's fun because both companies are named Cisco. So one is Cisco, the food delivery company. You see the trucks all over the place. Restaurants all over the country use Cisco and competitors to order food, essentially, and supplies for their restaurants. When you open the app from Cisco as a purchasing agent, in 300 milliseconds, that app will give you a completely personalized experience that knows who you are, your restaurant, your menu, price points, your geographic location, whether you tend to order in bulk for discounts or order on a spot basis. It knows the nearest warehouses to you and what's in stock. And because it's food, it knows what things they want to move from those warehouses and discount those things and possibly give the restaurant ideas for new menu items that can incorporate food that they can get. And so all of that comes together to create a completely personalized experience. And I'm not going to take the time now, but you can actually see if you go through empower, know, reach, show, delight me, how it hits all five of those. And talking to customers of Cisco, they have been amazed at how this makes their lives dramatically easier. And then it connects up with the supply chain. It coordinates when the delivery is going to happen. All of that is managed. Now, they don't have agents all the way through on that. No, it's not there yet, but you could see that eventually the entire thing from opening the app through the delivery and invoicing be completely end-to-end managed. A different example, the other Cisco, the technology company, sells mostly through salespeople. Cisco has over 100 products. A salesperson has quite a few different customers. And for a salesperson, they're overwhelmed. How do I know which product to call on with whom? And so what they've tended to do is when a new product announcement comes out from Cisco, they send that to all their customers, hoping to use that as a reason to get a meeting. But the vast majority of their customers are probably not interested in that particular product. And it led to salespeople getting more frustrated, not getting meetings. So what they've done is step back and create a CRM system on steroids. So they took a core CRM base, but added into it how are customers actually using which Cisco products? How often is the trend line going up or down? Which features are they using? In which geographic locations are they using it? What marketing information have they looked at before? Then they even have outside information brought in. Is this company expanding? Are they buying other companies, going into new geographies? Do they have cost pressure? And all of that comes together into a system together with a content management underpinning so that a salesperson gets a weekly call list, who to call, with what content, and why. And the why is really important, how the system figured it out. Since using this, they're getting way more meetings, cross-sell rates have gone up, Salesforce is dramatically happier. And so that's personalization. That's personalization to the rep, and it's personalization to the end customer who's now getting dramatically more relevant information. So that, again, it's not automated. There's a salesperson in the middle who does exercise judgment. You can see at the low end of their market how they might completely automate that all the way through. They're working on that. But it's a B2B situation where they're taking advantage of the steps in the channel and using that to personalize along each step. So those are a couple of different examples in the B2B realm that start to lay out the possibilities.
It strikes me that in this case, additional salesperson training would be required to help them understand how to navigate this large body of personalization data that they have available to them in order to know which pieces of data would be most important, most valuable, most relevant to the particular customer they're talking about.
Yes and no, Michael. So there's two parts to that. The no side of that is that more of what the AI is doing is simplifying what the salesperson sees by boiling it down to here's the customer, here's the content that we highly recommend, here's why. And the salesperson does not have to get into all the underlying data behind it. So it's making it simpler for them. And a lot of the generative AI is involved in making that interface much simpler for them. Now, the yes in terms of training, though, is of course there's training on using the system, but there's also training on getting the salesperson to bring data back into the system. So they talk with a customer. What happened? What did the customer engage with? What did they discuss? And increasingly, a lot of that can be captured by a salesperson just talking after a meeting into the app, and then the app translating that into data. So the salespeople need to acknowledge that they are part of the loop, not just users of the information. And actually, often that takes work. And it requires getting salespeople to do certain actions and a follow-up that they may not have been comfortable with before. But in organizations, especially where there's turnover of the sales force, this kind of capability becomes really valuable.
It's very interesting how you describe the role of the AI, among various other things, is to summarize and simplify that large body of data. And of course, as time goes by, the AI will do a much better job of that. It will do an ever improving job of pulling out the relevant items. But there is this set of changes to work that may arise as a result of all of this. And Greg Walters on LinkedIn asks this question. He says, how do you see the impacts on labor from the warehouse to the C-suite?
One of the things that's critical if you're going after personalization is the speed by which you operate. And we looked at we created a personalization index. together with BCG, we looked at the different capabilities companies had and the experiences that they generated and looked at who were leaders and who were laggards. The leaders operated differently. They recognized that AI requires faster metabolism for two reasons. One is when you get a signal from AI, because they spot a trigger, they see an opportunity, you should be jumping on it right then and there, ideally even automatedly in real time. So the faster you can act on it, the more value you can get. The second is AI requires more information to learn and get better and do delight, essentially. And the more you can test and learn and get things out the door, the more data back you get to feed the AI and make it smarter so that you understand better which are the kinds of experiences and creative that's going to get Michael to act versus David to act. And so this whole concept of speed becomes absolutely critical. And in these companies, they are redesigning their marketing organizations to work in pods with a lot less specialization. So groups of 5 or 6 people, basically strategy, analytics, creative, operations and technology, maybe somebody from compliance has to be involved as well. And they are working together to come up with ideas of what to test, get those tests out the door, look at the data, and constantly improve things over time. Now, from a work perspective, which was your question, there's several things involved here. One is just that nature of work. Instead of taking 6 weeks to get a program out the door, you're getting 5 programs out in 2 weeks. So it's a totally different mentality because you're getting people to work together. The other thing, in order to do that, is you're reducing the amount of specialization. And AI is enabling and forcing people, I believe, to be more generalists. A lot of the things in marketing that have led to what I believe is hyper specialization, people who are just doing social, just doing search, is because of the quirky nature of those interfaces. You have to understand how Google operates, how programmatic buying operates, and all the execution systems. AI is going to simplify all of that. The execution will be dramatically more automated. So that means you got to focus on thinking. What do you want to do? How do you want to think about the nature of the touches and the strategy? And that's going to focus people to have more breadth. That's better for their careers because they're not pocketed in narrow specialties, but it does force people who have been very narrowly focused in an execution specialty to step back and think about how they can broaden their skills. And companies have to help them do that. So one thing I absolutely see in marketing is a reduction in specialization, the use of small teams working together, and more generalist capabilities. And I think we're going to see that in a number of different areas. For example, in purchasing for supply chain management, and this is not about marketing and customer experiences, but a similar thing where you can have regional or more centralized views because the AI makes things smarter to be able to manage and coordinate inventories. That can have ripple effects on employment. It could. We haven't seen it yet. Most companies are using this to redeploy people, get more scalability out of them, recognizing the growth that they're getting, doing things they haven't been able to do before in order to getting smarter. But there is a risk of that. And I think a lot of what we're going to see is a tension between a pull towards more centralization and generalist capability, versus thinking about while at the same time we have to think about people who are very narrowly specialized, pocketed, how we can redeploy them. So there will be a tension there.
While we're on this subject of changes in work, what advice do you have for chief marketing officers at this juncture where there's so much that's evolving and changing so quickly?
I think there's 2 things that chief marketing officers have to do. One is you got to start experimenting with the capabilities that AI offers to be able to automate some more things, get your metabolism up, get faster, and get the per touch cost down. So be able to generate more creative and use that to test which is going to be the best and do that much faster. Be able to get tests out the door faster, all of which can allow you to do more and to scale and to hit growth targets faster, because it's not just about overall lowering costs, it's about lowering the cost per, so that if you can lower the cost per, you can use the savings to drive more growth. And you've got to be able to prove that you can do that balance. That's one thing, which is to reshape your organizations to be more scalable using the AI capabilities. The second, though, is at a higher level and getting away just from marketing tactics and thinking about personalized experiences. Like I was talking with Cisco, Sungevity, and there are many others in the book. Marketing has an amazing opportunity to be the strategic leader at the executive table who is banging on the table for personalization as a strategic opportunity. And I certainly was the situation I was in at Aetna, and I see that in a number of other places. It requires a whole leadership team to rally behind that because there's so much cross-functional capability involved. But someone's got to be the quarterback on the executive team. The CEO can't be the quarterback day to day. The chief marketing officer or evolved chief experience officer and their chief customer officer, however the label is, has a tremendous opportunity now to step up and say that these AI capabilities can enable us to compete differently. And I'm working with companies for whom that is absolutely the case. And the organizations want the CMO to step up to that because that is the right person. They're closest to the customer. They understand customer data. They can coordinate how to create more value. So I see it both as a pressure to get costs down and scalability up, but an incredible opportunity to be much more of a strategic leader.
To what extent broadly are you seeing CMOs that possess the emotional, the flexibility, the intellectual flexibility to adapt in this way as you're describing?
I don't have an overall assessment of all, but recently, together with BCG, we did a survey of chief marketing officers on how they were using AI tools. And as you would expect, the vast majority, 75% of them, have been experimenting with AI, and mostly for the tactical advantages it can give them to automate some processes of creative, help automate things like media selection. A lot of the tactical stuff, which I would say is kind of the easier stuff, they're starting to work on. And there are organization issues that they're facing in terms of pursuing that. And that's part of what they're grappling with. It came up a lot. I was at the ANA, Association of National Advertisers, Masters of Marketing Conference last week in Orlando. And how organizations are evolving was a key topic of conversation, moving more towards the pods, as I talked about before, and whether that's easy or hard to do, but most are finding if they do, it's one of the best ways to get it working. As far as the strategy side, really only about 10% of the CMOs admittedly stepped up to say that they're stepping up to really lead the way on personalization and using the AI capabilities for more value-oriented personalization. Quite a few are saying, about 30% are saying it's on the horizon. They want to get there. About 10% really said they were there. And interestingly, when we did our personalization index, where we looked at 200 companies, it was only about 10% of the companies that we considered leaders. What was interesting, though, and one of the things that surprised us through all of this research, is that personalization leaders are happening in every category except consumer packaged goods, because consumer packaged goods are really hard to get end customer data. But across any business that has direct customer contact, you are seeing B2B, healthcare, financial services, travel, retail, fashion, all of those businesses, you are seeing leaders. And so we're seeing more of a range within categories than between categories, which means it's possible for any business to pursue this. It's really a question of focus.
Arslan Khan comes back and says, data, as you described, as is being used to streamline end-to-end processes for better customer experiences. He says, it sounds like a lot of consultant speak, but what kinds of governance is needed for this type of data? And should IT be the only department responsible for this data?
There's a few things loaded in that. Let me actually work backwards. First of all, in terms of who should be responsible for the data, that is the responsibility of almost any department that is touching the customer, whether it's customer service, marketing, sales, billing, product, all of which capture data from the customer. IT enables a lot of the platform capabilities, the technology underneath it, but there are decisions in how you manage your business that are critical, that determine whether or not you're going to capture data. A very simple one is when you are running a marketing program, for example, are you tagging with metadata tags at a very granular level all the aspects of your contacts, such as the color, the nature of the words, the size, what time somebody opens it, whether they were touched beforehand to open it. When I was at Aetna, we had 44 different tags that we were using to understand what was going on in an interaction. That's not an IT thing. That's a functional decision to say, we want to capture that data. Then you work with IT to implement that and make that possible. So the business has to decide that it wants that data. The business also has to decide that it wants to share data and bring together data in order to get a total picture of the customer. And that requires having a vision for what you want to do with that data and working together to make that possible. Now, as far as governance is concerned, IT is very critical, but I've also seen roles such as chief privacy officers in some companies, especially financial services and healthcare companies, that are thinking about policies and guidelines, some of which are technical, but some of which happen during the interaction. What questions do you ask somebody in a customer service call to get more information from them in a permissioned way? So are there guidelines from an operational perspective, for example, in a call center, of what data somebody can or cannot access? So there's usually some role. It may or may not be in IT. It could. It could be a chief data officer. There's a lot of different evolutions here, but there are policies, guidelines, and definitely technology capabilities that do need to be in place. The important thing is to make it explicit that you're going to manage that, have somebody on the hook to lead the way, but they have to work with the executive committee to make that possible. It takes a village.
Which gets right back to the beginning of our conversation, where personalization becomes the core of strategy, really.
Yeah, and this is something that isn't just in marketing. That's one of the huge points of the book. And in fact, there's a chapter in the book that goes through the different C-suite roles, CEO, even chief legal, general counsel, CFO, CIO, COO, all the different roles in the leadership suite and how they contribute to a personalization strategy. The thing is, it's a strategy and it is a decision of how you want to compete. So, for example, several years ago, Howard Schultz at Starbucks said publicly in an investor call he wanted Starbucks to be the most personalized brand in the world. And Starbucks' app, very similar to what I talked about with Cisco, you open that app, you get an incredibly personalized experience. Now, they may have had some operational issues that have stemmed from that caused the stores to be overloaded. But from a personalization perspective, you can't deny that they put things together to try to make that possible and actually did advance the ball. There's just a lot of systemic things they still have to work out. So it is a corporate strategy that marketing may be the quarterback, but it takes the C-suite working together.
Share advice on really walking through those five promises so that marketing folks listen can get a little bit more of a concrete sense of how they can address the personalization opportunities and challenges that you've laid out.
Number one is really the goal is to empower customers. But in the very short term, immediately, there are things you can start doing. Two in particular. One is managing your reach. So reach me and orchestrating contacts so that you are not overloading the customer. So having some function, some role, somebody who's doing the analysis on what really is the next best action. And there's certainly IT capabilities, and probably most of you have CRM systems that can do this if you let it do it, if you put the data in and actually let it help you make decisions so that you can do less is more, being more appropriate in how you're actually touching people. The second, which is also tactical, is show me and actually using capabilities like Sunday Sky to create personalized videos. That's a really easy thing to do. To take something that may be more complex, like helping you understand your loyalty program and what you can redeem points for, given how many you've accrued, given what your interests have been in the past, all of that can be done in a personalized video. These are things you can just start with. They're tactical marketing things, but they can make a difference. Then the broader thing is to step back and say, are there more systemic opportunities to address problems that customers have or open up new possibilities that will take a bit more coordination across the board to make possible? And thinking about things like the way Sungevity said, selling solar panels is ridiculously complicated or reductionistly manipulative. And so they said, we can come up with a different way to compete. And thinking about those opportunities, putting those on the table, and seeing even before you get all the AI, are there ways to do this at a small scale to prove the opportunity? And then as you start doing that, you can see what data and technology capabilities you need to scale it.
Arsalan Khan comes back again and he asks great questions. He says, it's, if everyone is responsible for data, then no one is responsible. In organizations, department might view which data is important, which is not. Should we have a central understanding of what data actually means for every department? Should organizations somehow specify what data means in a standard way through the organization?
Yeah, and that's why a number of companies are setting up roles like chief data or chief data and analytics officers. And those are, larger companies are absolutely putting in those roles to do exactly that and to work with department heads. I mean, even legal, there's data in all the contracts that you manage. So they are working with functions to do that. Short of that, it's probably the technology team that needs to do that. I would argue, though, that from an experience perspective, marketing should be at the table saying, in order to deliver, so not all the data for everything, but to deliver the experiences we want to deliver, here's the data we need, and work with the executive team explicitly on how to unlock that data, have a roadmap for doing it, work together through the issues, the trade-offs, do problem solving to do it, and be very focused, because you can go after everything and spin your wheels forever, but focusing on what's going to make a difference to the customer is where you should start.
How do we measure the impact of personalization?
It depends a lot on what your goals are for personalization. Is it customer engagement, so cross-sell, more use of your products, growth in lifetime value, lowering the cost of servicing your customers? It's important, we hadn't gotten into this, but personalization programs need to have a business-oriented goal. In the case of Cisco, the technology company, it's about sales. It's about getting in front of customers at the right time and driving growth and sales. In others, for example, at Aetna, one of the parts of personalization was helping people understand their health plans so we could get them to take healthier actions, have lower calls into the cost center, raise customer satisfaction. But there were measures that were around cost and managing customers. So it really depends on your business goals.
Clarity on what you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it.
Yep.
Are there obstacles or challenges or resistances that tend to come up as an organization is adopting or trying to adopt personalization? Can you briefly speak about those and what are some of the solutions or antidotes?
One of the main things is the fact that it is cross-functional and it does require different parts of the business working together in ways they have not before, which requires trade-offs. It requires making decisions about who has the big D for actually being the decision maker on things when there are trade-offs. And I'm seeing this in organizations, for example, where they want marketing or CXO to take the lead in driving this. Well, then that CXO becomes the client for IT, for service operations to do the investments and deliver against the specifications of the CXO who has made a business case that the organization is driving towards. So there's definitely functional dynamics and new kinds of models that companies have to experiment with. And there's no question there are challenges there.
Okay, and with that, a huge thank you to David Edelman. David, thank you so much for being with us. I'm very grateful to you.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely. And hope everyone has a good weekend if you're seeing this on Friday.
And thanks to everybody who asked questions. You guys are an amazing audience. You guys are so smart. Before you go, please subscribe to our newsletter and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out CXOTalk.com. We really do have extraordinary guests coming up. So check it out and have a great weekend. And we'll see you again soon. Take care, everybody.